Running a little three-man weave tonight on the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. We told you last week, my co-host Justin Cousart will be out. I always originally would try to start warm-up jumpers and like do the whole intro and not intro the guests, but like it always never works out as well. And like, especially if you're watching on video, it's kind of weird a little bit as well. But so two guests tonight. First to my, I'm seeing it right now is three columns. So the one directly to the right of me is Mr. Sam B. Albuquerque. Follow him on Twitter at Sam B. Albuquerque, sports editor for the Orange Observer, and of course a Big J journalist as well. Sam, what's going on?
Hey man, I always appreciate the Big J journalist. It's been a while. Sometimes it's don't feel as capital J as I should, but it's always nice to hear those words come out of the smooth voice of Kevin Rafuse.
I mean, you probably are the most, I mean, definitely on the sports journalism side of it in the trenches right now. I don't want to say that too loud to the guest on my right, and that, of course, is Chris Crawford, assistant program director at WSB Radio in Atlanta, at On Air with CC on Twitter, who has been deep in the news cycle. We could do obviously a whole podcast on that. Nobody is coming here for that. If anything, you all probably need a break from it. I know you especially do, but just a little bit going on right now.
Yeah. The Blue Jays are playing the Rays right now, 1-0 Rays in the bottom of the fourth. But Jays got 2 on with 2 out, so a lot of things going on like that. Yeah, yep.
Good for you still watching the Jays, by the way, because it has not been a great season for the Jays. Kind of disappointing. So good for you riding it out. The Phillies are in Minnesota tonight. They got smoked last night in the first game. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I can really not complain about baseball season so far. It's been great, but we're here to talk about basketball. We started with the Olympics last week. We did a little bit of the preview. I said that I just thought Team USA was really talented and going to steamroll everybody, even with the rest of the competition. Like, I recognize the world's gotten better. I know we just lost at FIBA, and boy, they have tested that so far. Of course, they did win both of these games against South Sudan, who is in their group, by the way, coming up at the Paris Olympics, and against Germany, who is one of the teams that is, better, full of NBA players, like could actually really give the U.S. a challenge here. The upset against South Sudan, or upset watch, I should say, would have been historical. They ended up eking that out 101-100. LeBron coming through late, scoring the bucket there, the go-ahead bucket, I should say, in the game against South Sudan, but also, just huge come crunch time again. And I don't know about you, Sam. I mean, you're a Lakers fan, but like that's been my big takeaway so far is, Olympic basketball in terms of FIBA. The big takeaway, I should say, besides the fact that the U.S. may be more vulnerable than I thought, but like the thing about FIBA to me is when you have such a talent or collection of talent like this, kind of the real pecking order comes out a little bit. And I just like, I shouldn't be surprised, but I can't stop marveling at 39-year-old LeBron James carrying this team at the end of games like this still.
I was talking to my brother because we were watching the game against Germany together, and when it came down to crunch time and LeBron, makes those clutch baskets, I look at him and I'm like, is there someone in the world right now that is better than LeBron for 5 minutes? And I honestly could not answer another name. Like, he can do everything Luka can do. He can do everything Jokic can do. He can do everything Giannis can do. But he can't do it for an entire season. But he can do it for 5 minutes. And we saw it against Germany. And like you said, the pecking order starts to kind of play out in these teams full of superstars when, stuff hits the fan. And it hit the fan against South Sudan. It hit the fan against Germany. And LeBron put on his feet for 5 minutes and was the best player in the world. And I think that's what it is with LeBron. At 39 years old, he can still do that. And that's the kind of stuff that helps his argument to be, sort of the greatest player of all time. Like, I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but it's stuff like that makes it really feel like he has legit argument against like guys like him.
I think you're right with that 5-minute point. Like, that's kind of where I'm at, because I think there are better players than LeBron. Now, I have given up that torch of LeBron being the best player in the NBA. Like, it's been, or Giannis or Steph or, there's a few different guys now between Jokic and, a few others that you could maybe make the argument for. But you're right. I mean, it's just I will still trust him over everybody when it comes down to it. And it is just one of those things. The longevity is always what we marvel at. But It's certainly. I guess you don't think there are new ways that could pad his resume, and then here we have the Olympics just padding his resume in 2024. But and again, these are exhibition games. Like I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but these are the last tune-up games, and if it looks like he's going to be one of the big guys going forward. Cece, what have been your impressions on this team so far? I mean, obviously these games have been close. It certainly has put everyone on alert. Other countries have tons of NBA talent at this point. Like I remember I saw the stat where it's like the dream team when they were playing, there were like 6 players internationally who were playing NBA, and now it's like well into the 50s at this point. But what have been your big takeaways?
I think that it's interesting because it's a stupid metaphor that I'm going to make, especially given the fact that it's the Olympics, or just an analogy, but it's like we're watching the passing of the Olympic torch, so to speak, from Team USA. Thank you, Sam. From Team USA to the rest of the world.
I missed it. It's been a while since I got these matches.
But it's I think we're kind of seeing the fact that the USA isn't going to be the dominant force in world basketball that it once was. And so LeBron, I think that it's going to be interesting to see if we get a kind of Olympic-esque run like LeBron's run in the bubble, right? Where it's just like all him trying to take down the world, right? Like it's like the one thing that he hasn't really quite added to his resume. He's got a gold medal, but like I'm saying, it wasn't necessarily difficult. Like a difficult gold medal at this stage in age of the NBA and world basketball would be really interesting if it's a struggle. Just because I think that people will start to recognize not all of the talent is in US anymore as far as basketball goes, and see the growth of the game. But it'll also be kind of a perfect swan song for Team USA and LeBron in the era of which we've dominated from, back in the 80s,
well, and
70s, 60s, however long.
Oh, and this is what's supposed to be, right? Like the go around and the theme of this squad was the last dance, if you will, Olympic wise, for LeBron, for Steph, for Kevin Durant. Because they're not going to be playing in 2028. Well, I guess LeBron could at this rate, the way everything's going. But like he said, this is going to be his last Olympics. You're right. I mean, because I do. I mean,
but like, who was the last? I mean, like Joel Embiid is playing for Team USA, so I guess you could say him. But like, who's the last American to win MVP?
Yeah, we had this conversation recently because this came up as a trivia question, and I'm trying to remember. I got to think back because it's like you're right. Embiid's playing for America, but he's not, from America originally. Jokic is Serbian. Giannis, I think it's Harden. I'm pretty sure it's Harden in 18.
I honestly don't know the answer to the question. That's why I asked. Because that's what I mean. Like I'd have to look. I thought it was Harden or Steph or KD, one of the three there.
It's Harden in 18, Westbrook in 17, and Steph 16.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the triple double.
But looking down the road too, I mean, Jason Tatum is probably the best hope for the US, because I mean, who's the favorite for MVP the next, 4 or 5 years down the road? You're looking at guys like Luka, Giannis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Vic. Like, none of those guys are American. And I think that that's just kind of where we are, that we now have stars in so many different countries all over the world, that this might be the most exciting Olympics as far as just how close a lot of these teams are. But it's the start of what could become a very long run of really exciting and, totally up in the air Olympics as to who is actually going to win and who the favorite will be, because there'll be so many good teams with so many deep NBA players on their rosters.
It's the variety now. Like, that's my biggest thing, is because, I mean, back in the day, like Spain, for example, was always good. I remember those, like with 08 team, they had that classic final against Spain. Like that, I've said this on the pod. I swear I've said it at least like 15 times, but that is one of the most underrated Kobe games of all time. Like, that to me is a feather that should be in his cap that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, because I mean, but besides that, you're right. They weren't getting pushed like that, where, just again, South Sudan is somebody that, and credit to them building that program up. I mean, what a job that's been done down there.
Shout out Luol Deng.
Yeah, Luol Deng, the man, but getting it, but being able to push them like that, like we said, that's not even the team you think of that's full of NBA talent. Like, we're not talking about, Germany is maybe somebody we expect a little bit more when they've got Franz, when they've got Dennis Schroeder on their team, Jokic with Serbia, who's in the USA's group, so that'll be a lot of fun as well. France, somebody who was in the gold medal game last go around. Like, there are multiple different teams. Like, you're right, the US is on upset. Like, you just can't play with your food anymore. That's the biggest thing. And I don't think it's been that way for a bit now, but you definitely can't get away with it. And, I think that's what you hope the US is getting out of their system now. It's like, hey, these are tune-up games for a reason. Like, you got to figure out your lineups. You got to figure out your rotations. I know the big man topic has been pretty hot recently with Embiid and with AD. I do think Embiid was horrible in that first tune-up. There's no way he fouled out in 12 minutes. But he was really, really effective. I think him and Drew Holiday had the highest plus-minus in the tune-up against Germany. So, and I mean, look, being able to get it against Germany, like, that is a team you could very well see in an eventual gold medal game. So, at the end of the day, they did squeak these out.
The thing to me that, when I think about this team and sort of what it's supposed to be, we talk about that final run, and we've seen it be kind of an issue here with South Sudan and with Germany, is this isn't a team like that's built like a team. This is the issue that the USA have had in the past. You think about what happened in Greece, is they've just brought a collection of superstars for a roster that kind of doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Like, I don't. The only true point guard on this team is Tyrese Halliburton. Like, Steph's a point guard, but he's an off-ball cutter who he can start the offense, but you're wanting him in motion. I guess you could talk about Drew Holiday being a point guard. He's been more of an off-ball guard his whole career, and Derek White definitely not a true point guard. And so when I think about that, I'm like, okay, LeBron maybe is more of a point guard. And you start to kind of see how the pieces, we got a bunch of athletic wings who are great being ball-dominant players. We have a player in Joel Embiid who's a bit of a dinosaur, especially in the international game. And you start to kind of piece this roster together. It's like, this feels more like 04 than it does the Redeem team. This feels like they put together the best players and older players, who LeBron is being the best example of that. But they haven't put together a team. Like, I was talking to my brother during the Germany game. Derek White gets out there. My brother's like, why is Derek White out here? Like, why is he on this team? Why isn't Jaylen Brown here? I'm like, Derek White's a glue guy. And it's like, he and Drew Holiday are the only glue guys on the team. The rest of this team is full of, number one options. And that's going to be, I think, the biggest problem, especially against teams like Germany, who have been playing together forever.
Kev, he called Embiid a dinosaur.
Yeah.
I just said it's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to
get surf issues.
It's always we're only 13 minutes in. We can't get after it that fast. The one thing you did mention, though, with Halliburton is, it's like, Hallie, you think would be the guy who'd be more of that true point guard and who does such a good job at facilitating, obviously, during the regular season. Like, you think he'd be the guy to kind of defer here and maybe he would rise to the top, and his minutes have just vanished. Like, they've been basically non-existent the last few games. Because who are you
going to play more? LeBron, Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards? Like, Tyrese Halliburton's a hell of a player, but he's not going to get the notoriety in a locker room like that.
Well, I think that's the problem right there. What you said is the fact that this is still a team full of egos. And you heard Wade say it the other day, like, that LeBron is so hard to play with, difficult to play with, or whatever. Like, it's because this team is full of guys who all think they're better than the other guy. So it's going to be a, pecking order of who's the best all the way down to who's the worst as far as the outlook of the team. And that's how they're kind of running the offense and how they're running these teams out there. And I just don't think that's ever going to work, as you said, with they're building the 04 team, where it's just a lot of good players, and this team just has a lot of egos and it's a lot of good players. So it's never going to be a situation where, like, oh, maybe we should have the best point guard on this roster start. Like, there's no one on this roster who is capable of standing up and saying that, at least out of the big starting 5 to 8 guys.
I guess I'm just surprised, only because it didn't seem like this is an ego team. You know what I mean? Like that 04 team seems so out of sync right away, where it seemed like the way they recruited this team and built it together, that they were all kind of coming in on this common purpose. And I mean, look, all these guys are obviously used to being alphas for the most part. They're number one options on their team. I mean, this is a starting lineup with Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Jason Tatum. Like, hello, what are we talking about? You know, I do think from the point guard going back to that, like LeBron, obviously being on the floor does kind of play that point guard hybrid anyway, you know, that role that Jokic plays, that even some Domantas Sabonis plays to a lesser extent. Like, I mean, Kevin Garnett was talking about him. He said Kevin Garnett, he had that clip the other day where he's like, man, LeBron could play till he's 50 if he plays in that Draymond Green role full time. But that kind of is what it is here. And I think I mean, you've seen what it's supposed to look like as well. Like they've gone to Steph Curry at the end of games as well. He's just missed shots. Like that game against Germany, he missed 3 shots late.
But don't forget the reason, like their mentality of coming together in a way of like for a common goal, like, hey, let's do this, was because everyone called them out on not doing it last time. USA didn't really perform great in the last Olympics. So now they're like, all right, let's all get together and do this to show them what we can do. Like it was an ego-driven decision to all come back and do the Olympics again.
Yeah, to end it. And that is like it's their last dance together. Because you're right, like that's what we talked about. They build it, but I don't know.
But I don't think I don't know if they come back if they win the gold in the last Olympics.
Well, they did win the gold in the last Olympics. They lost FIBA. They lost that tournament. They won the last gold.
Or FIBA, maybe it's FIBA what I'm thinking of.
I think FIBA they write off as going, hey, we didn't have anywhere near our best lineup out there, because they didn't, to be fair. Yeah. Like that FIBA team was extremely young at this point. Like that last Olympic team had Kevin Durant leading the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because that's when our pal Evan Fournier was going crazy for France. He had a really great Olympic.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know if it's as much as an ego thing. I just think it's a team building thing. Like, there's no, like, for as much as Steph is the greatest shooter of all time, he's not sitting in the corner catching and shooting like a Kyle Korver did. You know what I mean? This team isn't built in that way. And so that's why, I point out the point guard situation. You know, Anthony Davis is can play as a rim running big, but like, he's much more than that. And so when you, I guess, demote him to that role, like then ego comes into play. But I just don't think that there's specific players for specific roles. Like Klay Thompson back in the day, not now, was the perfect Team USA stretch, like floor stretcher that played defense, that was athletic, that played a role. You know, and I just that's sort of my issue with this team is like lack of a true point guard who's among your best players, lack of true floor spacing shooters, lack of rim running bigs. Like you have one out there, and Anthony Davis is injury prone, and you have a plethora. I guess you can count Bam as well, but I think Bam is a little smaller, especially when you think about playing against Serbia, playing against some of these bigger teams in Europe. It's just you got a lot of wings who are athletic and can dribble. That's awesome, but that's not how you build a team, and that's what I mean when it comes to biggest issue. And it could be an ego thing. Like I think CC's got a solid point on that because these are superstar athletes, but it's just like, where's Jerry Colangelo? Like as much as you hate him over there in Philadelphia, he did a great job building.
You're fired. Get him out of here.
But tell me that's why Brian got the job in Philly, is because of what they did for Team USA.
I don't want to talk about why Brian got the job in Philly. That's going to get me more than Embiid being a dinosaur.
In the international game, Kev, don't let CC manipulate my words.
I know. I get what you're saying, though. You're right. It is about team building. It is about a roster that it has to fit. It can't just be a collection of talent. Like I do think we're all on the same page as that. You're right. Maybe we're gonna see. I think they're going to lean on Embiid. I do think he trended in the right direction. And if not, give AD more minutes. Maybe Steve Kerr's got to be quick on that decision. We'll see if he will. Their first game is against Serbia, so nothing like warming up with Nikola Jokic very fast. The U.S.'s first game is on July 28th. There's a few group play officially starts on the 27th. There's 4 games that day: Australia, Spain, Germany, Japan, Greece, Canada. That'll be a good one. And France, Brazil. So a few squads that we mentioned earlier that could possibly knock the USA off. Germany stands out, of course. I think Canada is really good. They're the other likely team that could jump off. Of course, Australia is always a threat. Anybody else we think we're missing that you guys are really high on?
I mean, I feel like France will be frisky with Vic.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a matchup issue with France, I think.
Especially with the FIBA rules.
Yeah, I always like Spain. I like they're consistent. They move the ball. That's the thing with what I've seen through an international play is ball movement always affects teams that are ISO heavy. And so, coming from the NBA, like teams that can move the ball around, that can cause confusion within, man teams that are constantly motion. Spain's always done that, and Ricky Rubio is still there. And so, I think that there's a chance Spain can mess with us, but
Is Luis Scola still playing for Argentina?
I think he is low key. I mean, Argentina's not.
Is he not?
Wasn't he 42 in the last Olympics? Wasn't he 42 still playing for them or something like that?
It was. He was playing for long. Argentina, unfortunately, did not qualify this year, so we won't get to see him. I mean, it was him and Nocioni, Andres Nocioni, were playing for the longest time for Argentina.
He's currently the executive, the chief executive officer for the Italian Serie A team, Pala Concerto Varese? No idea.
I mean, solid squad.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime you got to get into Serie A, you got to do it. Welcome, everybody, to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rafuse again. Samby Albuquerque, follow him on Twitter at Samby Albuquerque. Chris Crawford, follow him on Twitter, On Air with CC. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. I'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon Music, Player FM, anywhere you find a podcast, you can find us. And of course, you can always watch the podcast. Just subscribe, search the Drive and Dish NBA podcast on YouTube. You will see a video version there as well. And now a word from our sponsors. All right, so the biggest news coming out this week, because free agency is winding down at this point. Like Justin and I always joke that there's never a slow period in the NBA anymore, but it is starting to get to that point where we're in the midst of summer league. The news is trickling, but it's still coming out. And a pretty big one out of Cleveland this week with Evan Mobley officially agreeing on the 5-year maximum rookie contract extension, $224 million with incentives. Can get all the way to $269 million. A few people from this class have gotten that extension now. Of course, our pal Franz Wagner down in Orlando, one of them notably. But I mean, this wraps up a big offseason for Cleveland, getting the deal with Donovan Mitchell done, now bringing Evan Mobley back. I guess the greater question that I have for both of you, Cece, I'll start with you, but this Cleveland core is locked in now for the most part. There is a question of what they're going to do with Darius Garland. It did seem that Garland might be on the move if they brought back Mitchell. Obviously, that's done. That's pretty great for them as well, of course, bringing back Donovan Mitchell and kind of knocking all those rumors off for a little bit. But, I mean, this is a team that got pushed to 7 games by Orlando this past year. They've been in the playoffs multiple years now, but they haven't necessarily taken that step. And I feel like a lot of that has been because of the young core. These guys have a lot of hype, Mobley among them. You don't accidentally get this contract, but where are you at with this team? Because it feels like they just don't get talked about the way that, obviously a Boston does, but even now the way a Knicks and a Philly are.
Yeah, I love all these guys together on the same, I love all these guys just in general, right? They're all great players, but on the same team, I don't know what it is. I think that it might be just the fact that they're all going to be injured and miss at least a certain amount of games each season. And it seems like it's overlapping at times. There's never going to be a consistency with these guys playing together. It's like one of those things when it was the KD, Harden, and Kyrie in Brooklyn, right? Where how many games has that starting 3 played together? I would be very curious to see how many games that core 4 for Cleveland has played together. Just because I don't think it's a lot, and I don't think it's going to be a lot based on those 4 guys and their histories and what we've seen from them. Now, could they maybe have a great season where they all stay healthy and prove me wrong? Probably, because that just seems to be what happens when I make declarations like this. But I just don't know if they'll be able to hold up. If they do, though, I do really like the core of this team, as we were just talking about with the Olympics. This is you've got guys that know their roles, play their roles, and are all very, very good in their roles and excel and could be great. So, yeah, I think that if they're a healthy team and can stay healthy and get some consistency, they could be a pretty dangerous team and like a sneaky dangerous team late in the year. But they've got to get more time on the floor together.
Sam, what about you?
I get why you give these players this contract. You don't want to lose the assets, and they're still all relatively young. I think Donovan's the veteran on that team, but maybe Jared Allen's older than him. But you're talking about 4 guys in your core starting lineup that are probably under the age of 28 and still have room to grow as players. So I get why you build the roster and keep the assets as they have. But this team, to me, is missing a key piece. And there's two lines of thought with it. Like, they're missing that wing 3-and-D defender like a Mikal Bridges that can really kind of lock down the best player on a different team. So you think about Jason Tatum, you think about Jimmy Butler, those kind of guys. Darius and Donovan are not defensive stoppers, and in their backcourt, when you have 2 guys that are kind of poor defenders, average defenders, that's going to rear its ugly head, especially in the playoffs and especially in the East when you think about the teams you have to go through. And so there's that side of it. And then there's the other side of it where it feels like they have duplicates at their best, the best players. Like, it feels like Darius and Donovan, though they're not similar, they have similar flaws in the defensive side. They're both undersized guards. And, they both need the ball in their hands. And when you think about Evan and Jarrett, you're talking about 2 bigs who are rim protectors. Evan probably stretches the floor and does more for you offensively, but can they play together is what I mean by duplicates. And so I lean towards you have to sign these players, but this group is probably not going to get you over the top. You need to add more wing defending, more stretching the floor, shooting at the wing position. And I think if you probably have to split up one of those 2 duos. I would lean towards getting rid of a guy like Jared Allen because I feel like Evan has more potential. But Evan probably gets you, a lot more in return. And Jared Allen is a very useful player in the NBA, and he's always been a consummate professional. He does his job. He plays defense. He's an anchor of a defense. He can rim run and provide what is needed in modern pick and roll basketball. And so that's kind of where I land with it. And then I thought the Kenny Atkinson hire was a little uninspired. But that's just me. Like, I didn't love JB Bickerstaff when they brought him in. I was calling for him to be fired up, even before this past year. And so to bring in another, guy who I like in Kenny Atkinson, but he's a bit of a retread. We know what he's about. Like, I wish they would have taken a bigger risk or try to get a bigger name, because ultimately this team is stale because, Kobe Altman has been running the team for how long now? Ever since LeBron was there. And so it's like, I feel like there's a lot of job security with the front office. I feel like now with Kenny Atkinson, it feels like they're a very slow developing team. So I don't know what the future holds, but that's kind of my approach. I think you need wings, and you need to kind of figure out, make a decision with your duos and who you're going to keep and who you're going to move on from.
I'm with you entirely on the wings need. I do think they need a little more there, and they've got a few, but I don't know. Like, LeVert has way too many flaws in his game to me at this point. But where I'm at essentially, because weirdly the numbers, the on-off numbers with Mobley and with Allen haven't been that bad. Like, most lineups with those 2 playing together are positive, and I kind of like, because Mobley can stretch the floor. Like, I kind of like him playing. They don't play the same type of game necessarily, but it almost reminds me of how he plays, like with Jared Jackson, where there's a lot of efficiency when you put him with a more traditional center. Jared Allen is that more traditional center. Garland's been the one I've been disappointed in, and maybe that's more for how high I was with him in the draft. Like, I really thought he was just going to be a franchise guy. I love this pick for Cleveland, and he hasn't been bad so far. He shows you moments of that, but I mean, Donovan is just so steady at this point. Like, it's kind of hard if you have to make that choice. Like, you went and swung big for Donovan Mitchell. You've got him now locked up on a contract. Like, this is who you're building around. If this team is going to be competitive, you want to keep him happy and on the roster. I actually do slightly disagree with you, Sam, regarding Kenny Atkinson. When Kenny Atkinson got fired from Brooklyn back in the day, it was really weird to me. Yeah,
I agree. I've been waiting for him to get a head coaching job again since that happened. I've been waiting for a team to come in and get him because I think he's got something to prove, and I think he's going to be a really good guy to bring in.
Yeah, me too. And he was an assistant in Golden State, like, and so he kind of had his choice to hang out there for a little bit. Obviously, it's a pretty good job to hang out with. At he got a ring there in 2 years ago, but like, because I'm with you in the sense that, like, you're right. It's another guy who's had a head coaching position before. Like, there's a little bit of a retread element to it. But I am weirdly, like, with CC here, like, I'm a Kenny Atkinson truther a little bit. Like, I thought he did a really good job in Brooklyn. When he got fired, it reminded me of, like, when Mike Malone got fired in Sacramento, where I kind of, my reaction was just like, what happened here? Like, it seemed to be working. Everything was like Brooklyn overachieved the year Kenny Atkinson got fired, and then
Yes.
they just never really kind of gave him a shot. Like, they moved on as they started to bring free agents in.
Yeah, it was a KD Kyrie kind of decision, wasn't it?
Yeah, which was
yeah,
weird.
Yeah.
Well, they were winning. I don't get it.
It was because he was trying to coach, and they didn't want to coach.
Yeah,
Like, it's problem number one.
But that's part of the reason why I'm kind of lower on this, is because though time has proven that KD and Kyrie are not the easiest players to coach, one of the parts of an NBA head coaching, I guess one of the criteria that you need to meet is to be able to deal with superstars. And Kenny,
he was so far over his head in that position. Any coach that went in there was going to be stuck in that position. They went out and gave them a list of one person who they wanted to bring in as a head coach, and it was Steve Nash, because he would be their yes man. Like, I don't think that that's a fair comparison to make, only because of the just situation that was in Brooklyn, that whoever that head coach was at the time was a walking dead man. It didn't, unless they won a championship in the first year with them, that person was a walking dead man. And I think that they desperately do need a wing defender, because I think that the Magic really exposed how Evan Mobley really can't guard those wing switches that well. I know I almost said Evan Turner. You got me there. And it was interesting to see, because Mobley's actually always been regarded as a really good defender, but the Magic figured out schemes and situations to get him into that made him expose some flaws and expose the way that Jared Allen comes to help out on defense with that team. But overall, like, that team was the second best defensive team in the NBA all season, like, efficiency wise. Darius Garland, while he may not be doing what we all want him to do offensively, is a very good on-ball defender. He's very long and very underrated defensively, and he keeps the guy in front of him more often than not. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I think this team, as long as they can all stay healthy and play together, are kind of poised in a way where they can win, as long as Darius Garland realizes that he's kind of be more of a facilitator on offense, and Donovan Mitchell's that scorer, and probably Evan Mobley's really the second option, which is probably the other problem. I think they need to figure out a way to get Darius Garland to score while also helping Mitchell. But, like, I think that will come in time with those two, in a way that you saw it eventually develop with the Damian Lillard and the CJ McCollum.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley, bringing it back to him, like, he really might be the key here, because I think an ideal version of this team has him as the number 2 option. Like, you're right, he's a great defender. He's a finalist for Defensive of the Year or Defensive Player of the Year a few years ago, but just the offense is stalled. Like, all the potential is there. Like, that's why I'm not really bashing this contract at all. Like, this is absolutely a decision you make if you're Cleveland. Like, you take the bet on young potential like this every time. They just, if they're going to leap, they need him to be what we think he can be. Like, he looks
they
like
need him
that like modern day elite center.
Well, they need that, and I think they need, like, I really do think that they need Darius Garland to offensively step it up to one more level. Like, because I do think that this backcourt is very much a Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum in Portland, but the guys around them, oh wow, back-to-back home runs for the Jays, nice. But the guys around them are a lot better. Like, if you put like an Evan Mobley and a Jared Allen on that Portland team, I know they have Nurkic at the time and everything, but like, Jared Allen slight downgrade, but if you put Evan Mobley with that, like, that's a really damn good basketball team, and you've got a really similar situation in Cleveland, but they're much better defensively. So I just think that if they do find that one wing defender who can really solidify things and kind of shore up that whole 5 defense that they can run out there, and Darius Garland can take that next step offensively. I know you said Jared Allen kind of taking that next step, but I think that the key is Darius Garland taking that next step offensively and really turning this team into the team that I could potentially see them being if they're all healthy.
I completely agree with that last point you made, CC. I think the key to this team is Darius Garland proving that he can be the number 1 option offensively. It's just,
but he can't. He's got to. But he has to. But he's got. He's a number. But he's got to show that he can be the number 2. Like he's not. I
disagree, because I think when it comes down to Donovan Mitchell, like I love Donovan Mitchell as a player. He's an asset for any team. But when he's your number 1 option, your ceiling is capped. I think because of his size defensively, it's always he's a 2 guard. He's not a 1, so you're going to need to pair him with a smaller guard who's gonna facilitate and help really run that offense. And so you're always going to be smaller in the backcourt, and you're always going to have an issue defensively when it comes to the backcourt. And so if Darius can be that number 1 option offensively, I think the move to build out this roster, to build that wing defense, to get a Jaylen Brown archetype of a player next to Garland, next to Jared Allen, next to even Max Strus, you can keep Max Strus out there, is to be able to move on from a guy like Donovan Mitchell, where you can't do that if you don't have a number 1 option you trust that can give you that same sort of production that Mitchell is going to give you. It's just that it's a paradox, because you need the offense that Mitchell is going to give you to be successful, but defensively he's gonna like bind your ability to build this team into a championship contender. You're going to be in that limbo of what Utah was for pretty much his entire career there.
So real quick before we move off of Cleveland entirely and we switch gears and go out west a little bit, I mentioned kind of the CCU said that you kind of have them in that same secondary tier. Like I think we all have Boston as one in the East still right now. CCU mentioned you have them kind of with Philly and New York. I think you got to mention Indy in here as well. They went to the conference finals last year. Like that feels kind of weird to leave them out. But I guess if we're ranking them right now, just based on where the rosters sit, where we're at post off season, kind of seed these teams to me, if you will.
I think it's Celtics 1. I think it's Knicks 2. And then I kind of jumbled the Sixers, the Pacers, the Cavs, and I honestly, the way the Magic kind of played last year, I think they can only step up 2 this year. And I think that all those teams are kind of gonna, even I could even see the Heat falling into that cat. Like it's a really interesting. I feel like there's a clear 1 in the Boston Celtics, and the Knicks kind of took that step and made the moves this offseason to take that number 2 spot. But man, the spots 2 through 9 or so in the East are going to be a lot of fun this year, or 3 through 9, I guess in this case.
I kind of feel like
so. I weaseled my way out of that question. You're welcome.
I'll be more concrete for you, CJ. I think it's Boston clearly in its own tier. I think New York is also in its own tier too, and I think that it's Milwaukee, it's Philly, and it's maybe the Bucks, or maybe the Pacers, like in there, and maybe the Magic. Like I think it's Milwaukee, then probably Philly, and then you can kind of interchange those, and then it's after that it's the Pacers, it's the Magic, it's the Heat. And then I think the Cavs are in that bottom tier there with the Magic, with the Pacers, with the Heat. I don't see them as a team that's going to make an Eastern Conference Finals. And even though Indiana made one, Atlanta made one a couple years back. I think back to Portland making one a couple years. Making the conference finals a lot of times can just fall into was it Jalen Brunson got hurt? Who was the next player that got hurt in the playoffs that in that series that helped make that series a little bit easier? Yeah. And so it's they made the Eastern Conference playoffs, but I don't think they're a team that's as good as the Knicks, as good as the Bucks, as good as the Sixers. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's Boston, New York, Milwaukee, and Philly interchangeable. I'd probably give it to Philly a little bit, and then it's the Magic, the Cavs, the Pacers, the Heat.
Milwaukee's big in the prove it mode for me this year. I mean,
I need to see it.
I agree. You got Doc still coaching. Like, I don't know. The vibes around Milwaukee stink right now. I guess that's just what I'm looking at. They have Giannis.
To Potty, man. He's a much better podcaster.
Yeah.
He's head coach right now.
He should not be getting jobs still. I don't know how this man is still getting jobs. Like, I mean.
Because he's a good podcaster. He can talk. That's why.
Shout out to JJ Redick. Let's go out west, though. Russell Westbrook has a new home. He's been traded from the Clippers, of course, to Utah, who immediately waived him. Everything is saying that he's going to Denver. Jokic has greenlit this move apparently. Obviously for Denver, they probably, I guess if you want to say there was something that brought them down last year, is that they relied a lot more on their young guys. Like they were missing some of those more, those veteran contributions they had the year they won the title. They were missing the Bruce Browns of the world, the Jeff Greens of the world. And, look, you got Jokic, you got Murray, you always are going to have a shot. Aaron Gordon's still there hooping as well. But, this would be a pretty big change bringing Russ in. Obviously, it's been a lot of ups and downs recently. The Lakers' tenure, not so great. The Clippers' tenure had better moments for sure. I still think we also know what Russell Westbrook's flaws are. So I don't know. I guess the question, Sam, I'll start with you. Like, do you think this is going to nuke Denver like it kind of has for some other teams so far? Do you think this can actually work?
I don't know. Like, I feel like Russ has become such a non-factor on teams now. Like, he's Reggie Jackson. Like, he's replacing Reggie Jackson in my mind. And the only difference is he going to think he's still going to be Russell Westbrook because he's heading to, back to sort of the Midwest again, like he was in Oklahoma City. But other than that, like, I feel like Jokic has such a simple presence of like, hey, I'm the best player here. Everything's going to run through me. And Michael Malone, sorry, not Mike Malone. Michael Malone is such a voice in that team that, I feel like he'll fall in line, but like, what is he going to do? Like, average 10 points a game and shoot 20% from three? Like, I don't see it being bad or good. I feel like it's going to be probably a net neutral. He's at this point, he's a replacement level player if he plays his role. And he still has the athleticism to rebound the ball effectively and to run up and down the court and to get to the hole, and especially against the second unit, that's effective. But I don't know how he fits within the starting rotation with Jokic as they run their offense in that like high post where they just dump it down to Jokic and he kind of everything runs around him. Maybe Russ decides to start cutting, and if he does, maybe he'll catch some nice passes from Jokic and turn into sort of a Aaron Gordon reclamation project sort of player for them. But that's a ceiling, right? He's as good as Aaron Gordon has been, if that's the best version of Russ. But you're probably just getting Reggie Jackson. Is what I kind of look at it like.
I mean, I guess I took it as they needed a backup point guard for sure. And so if Russ is a quality backup point guard behind Jamal Murray, then I think you kind of have hit the ceiling and you're pretty happy about it. Again, it's more of just like, you're right. It's what does Russ think he is at this point? But if he's serious about, trying to get a ring, fit in the flow of the offense, then certainly it's an upgrade as the backup guard. Like, I'm not really going to knock it too much because you're right. Like, we're not expecting Russ to be Mr. Triple-Double at this point. I mean, the bigger loss to me, if I'm looking at Denver as a whole, and CC obviously weigh in here too in a sec, but like them losing KCP to Orlando, like I just think KCP is such a valuable player, especially on the defensive end. Like, sure, you upgrade, you mentioned him replacing Reggie Jackson. Like, I do think Russ is an upgrade there, but I don't know. You can't expect him to be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope either. Like, I think it's a bigger net loss having him go out the door.
I think when you look at that team last year and just the kind of lack of depth in the injuries that they suffered through the year and everything, having a guy that you can bring in and he's going to contribute something off the bench in that point guard role, which you kind of need to upgrade after last year as well, is really important. I think that when you're a team with championship aspirations like they are, you can kind of feel comfortable knowing that you've got that role locked down and focus on everything else that you've got to do. And so when you bring a guy in like that and you sign him to a 3-year, $17 million deal, I think the Clippers were great on bringing Chris Dunn in. Yeah.
God, I love the Providence. Like, Justin, CC to Providence for the regular listeners is essentially what Justin is to Elfrid Payton. If there is a way to find him in the show, he will find that way to get them in the show somehow.
Sorry, I was just trying to talk about the relevant acquisition in that deal that was done. The meaningful part of that trade. The legendary. Yeah, the one and only Chris Dunn.
Wait a minute. Where was that at? Did you have that casually next to you?
What, my autographed Chris Dunn card?
Yeah, this one.
Did you
carry that on you? Is that like, I carry a $2 bill in my wallet? Is that like your $2 bill?
I mean, did I come prepared with props? Is that what you're asking? That's just an absurd question. Absolutely not. I came.
Oh, he went dark.
He went dark. I was going to say he went. He's coming back for props. Sam, my bad. What were you saying about $2 bill?
No. I'm with you too. I carry a $2 bill in my pocket. But as soon as you sent that outline with Westbrook to Denver, CC had everything prepared. Like, I hosted a show with CC for like 2 years straight, the man is like the quickest trigger to a joke. As soon as you point him out, that light bulb goes in his head, and you knew he was gonna use that percent card. I gotta miss that guy so much. I love it. It just brought back so many memories flooding in.
I mean, look, you know what it is, that fan zone connection. Rest in peace, ESPN 580 Orlando. He'll be back. CC will be back at some point. I think it'll be the same link. I probably should text him and tell him that the same link still works. So we're gonna do some live prod on the air. This is great for everybody. So Sam, what's you got anything you want to filibuster about here for a sec while I text him?
Yeah, I mean, I can always talk about something. We talk about the fan zone. That was always fun. I mean, when I think about Russ, like at this point in his career, it's such a funny thing because physically he hasn't deteriorated. He's still a legitimately like A+ A level athlete, and I don't understand. And it really kind of comes down to mentality and work ethic and motivations and that kind of stuff. And Russ has always been a different kind of cat. And when you think about, some of the off-court stuff, like Russ and like especially when Russ and Katie split, it was like Katie was into the rap game and he's definitely out there and living that I guess lifestyle, where Russ was weirdly, because it doesn't really match his game, was much more of like he had a kid, I think he was married, that kind of stuff. And so like maybe he just doesn't have that same type of motivation to get in the gym and win a title and that kind of stuff and work on his jump shot. Maybe he just doesn't think he has to. Like, I don't know what happened to Russ, because he was never a great shooter, but he was never a negative shooter in his heyday. And he's still, like, if you watched him last year with the Clippers when he was healthy, he's still a very good athlete. He's still very long and capable defender when he wants to defend it. So it's to me, his fall off is such a weird fall off, because you think about guys like Derrick Rose who had injuries, guys like I don't know, Blake Griffin, who are these hyper athletic dudes that just physically deteriorated, and that's why their games and adapt as they got older. That's not the case for Russ, and that's always been weird to me, because it feels like if you could go in his brain and like rewire how he thinks, he would be still an MVP player. And that's what's crazy, because he's like, that's just how I feel about Russ. And like, I hope one day he just kind of, clicks and he becomes, and it could be playing with a guy like Jokic has the ability to, click in the mind of really talented point guards. Like, maybe it's that Eastern European thing that Luka did with Kyrie, maybe Jokic can do with Russ, but I don't know. It's such a weird, I guess, experience when I think about Russ, because I watched him, in this sort of, I guess, point of his career when he was with the Lakers. I saw a little bit of him with the Clippers last year, and he looks similar to what he was with the Lakers, and it doesn't make sense that he's not the same player he was. And maybe it's just the league changed so much that he just couldn't adapt it. I don't know. But that was my filibuster.
Oh, first off, phenomenal filibuster, dude. That was wonderful. A few different points to hit on it. I do think he is a little bit of the victim of the athleticism fading. Because it is that vein, right, where it's like the Dwayne Wade type is always the example I use, where it's like there's such a good athlete, and Russ at his peak was arguably the best athlete in the NBA. Like, the dude was everywhere. Like, his speed, it was just, you're right, you didn't need to be a great shooter, and Russ was a better shooter, of course, back in the day than he is now. But he still does a good job of facilitating, getting his teammates involved. I don't think his athleticism has fallen entirely off the clip, or I think he'd be out of the NBA. What I wish with the mentality thing is, and maybe it's there now, but it's just a shame, because at this point, he's more of the, like, he isn't, he's a role player at this point, essentially. Like, I think he is still trying to win a title, because going to Denver screams, I'm trying to win a title. Like, you're going to play with arguably the best player in the NBA. They won it 2 years ago. Like, you would think you want to be a part of that. And so I like that part of it from Russ, where I wish the maybe the rewiring would have occurred were kind of those last years of his prime, right? Like when he was, finishing up in OKC, but those years with him and Paul George when they were still a little more competitive. And then even when he got to Houston, like when he was with the peak of Harden, like maybe there was a way to have made that work a little more. Like once he got to Washington, you know what it was. And that was Washington was probably the one year where it was like, that was the ultimate let Russ be Russ. Like he averaged a triple double. That team got into the playoffs as an 8 seed. Like they were hella competitive all year, but they just had a very hard capped ceiling on it, right? Like there was no one who thought that Wizards team was going any further than the first round. And like if Russ is your guy, that probably is just the ceiling at this point. Like the Lakers tenure was a disaster for a number of reasons that we, for your sake, don't have to go back and revisit. But I mean, there's a lot that went wrong there. And I think it did get redeemed a little bit with the Clippers. And that's why I think he's still hanging around. Like Russ is not the player that's just bounced out of the league either. And I think a ton of people have respect for him. Like he is a first ballot Hall of Famer that is worth always, keeping in the back of the mind as well. And I mean, that's got to be a first in Drive and Dish NBA podcast history. Because CC even jinxed it before the show, but CC is down in Atlanta since, he is the assistant program director of WSB, which is based in Atlanta, but it's storming down there and the power went out. And, sometimes you cruise for 50 minutes and then the power goes out in the middle of your stream. But I mean, hey, the good news for him is he had enough time to have a whole wardrobe change. So, a little more Providence love on the pod.
I didn't even notice. Here, I'm just going to adjust my blanket. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, it was a little chilly. I had to adjust my blanket.
We should have all just changed shirts just to be like, oh, it's the next day. We just had to pick up here.
Yeah, I lost power for 3 days.
I think there was a podcast. I want to say it was before we did the video, but I think there's only one time, maybe back in like 2017, where we just straight up recorded on 2 days. We're like, I don't remember what happened. But it was just like, we'll pick it up. It'll be fine. It won't be that much different. Wow, the 58. You gotta put a little O on the bottom. I don't think I have any props up here. What do I have any old radio props? I got an OKV pen, but this one's seen better days. Do I have another one up here?
No, all my radio props are in my office.
Oh, hang on.
That radio, that karaoke radio is in my office.
That's a great radio. I'm glad you still have that. That's in good hands.
Oh, yeah.
I got a bunch of these are the best ever low key. So I guess I have more of these than I thought. But these WOKV pens, they gave these out. It had to be like 10 years ago. Dude, I have so many of them. They're the best.
You can never have too many good pens.
Yeah. That's a different one. The OKV pen would be better if I had Chase on or Justin on, since Justin still works in Jacksonville and all that. I mean, CC is the last one of us still standing in true radio. The three of us all work together. Oh, my guys.
Wait, Sam, I saw you got your own Funko Pop. That is so. It was so. I got so excited for you. I got so excited for you. I was
My brother gave it to me for Father's Day.
Best gift he's ever gonna get his entire life.
Dude,
not only me. I don't know if you saw it.
Noah too, right?
The baby as you drop. No, not Noah. No.
Cut it in post, Kev. Cut it in post.
Oh my goodness. I hope that's not like a voodoo doll or anything. It's gonna give little man some trouble. But
this better not be, because it was right when I talked about the Friars, the power over here. So like that can't be a good omen either.
By the way, take the hat off. It's bald.
I didn't know you take the hat off. That's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Somebody got my mom one of those. Like they got a custom one, and I'm really upset about it because I for sure had that marked as a Christmas gift, and it just like now it's completely off the table. It was like one of her coworkers too. It wasn't even like somebody in the family.
Give me your name and address. I'll take care of it.
But it's what? Yeah. Just crazy though. The Noah one is super adorable though. Noah, for the record, is Sam's. How many months is he? 6 months at this point? Yeah.
6 months. Yeah. 6 months, little guy.
Dude, half a year chugging. Happy half birthday to our little homie. We do unfortunately have to end the podcast on a sadder note. And that's with the passing of Pat Williams. For those who are not familiar with Pat Williams, executive, most famous for his time with the Magic. Like he is absolutely integral in the Magic coming to Orlando. But ties elsewhere, like worked in Chicago, worked with the Sixers when they won the title in 1983. The three of us all met originally at WDBO, now 107.3 and AM 580 in Orlando. that was my old job where I went back to school. Sam and Cece worked there both at some point. Cece, you were the producer for Pat's show. Pat had a show on the weekends at DBO all the time, like well after he had retired. But you want to, I mean, easily one of the most influential people ever in the Central Florida area.
Without a doubt. I'm going to always cherish like all the time I had with him. He was going to come to the wedding, and Ruth had gotten sick a day two before, so he couldn't make it, and he actually called me to let me know. But it was funny in classic Pat ways, you know, it was 5 minutes to say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And then 20 minutes talking basketball.
Right.
Because that's just who he was. It's unbelievable. He was still just so interested and in love with the game, and just a person who cared about other people. Just quick, it was really incredible just to realize the type of human he was. I'd been doing his podcast from before COVID, and COVID hit. We obviously had to take a break, and me and my now wife Maggie had started dating a little bit before COVID had hit. And so, you know, I once told Pat about this girl I was seeing, and he was, oh, what's her name? You know, what does she do? Everything, you know, Maggie's teacher, you know, all that. You know, then COVID happens. We take a year and a half off really from recording the show, just out of precautions for his safety and everything. And actually ended up, I went and kind of set up a makeshift studio at his house so we could record at his house so he didn't have to go out. Which was actually really awesome just to get to go hang out with him at his house once a week for like 2-3 years in a row. It was awesome. But the first show, you know, I only had one set of headphones, and it's a phone interview. So for those of you who work in radio understand this, but behind the fourth wall, if you've only got one set of headphones and you're doing a phone interview, only the person who's got the headphones on is going to be able to hear the phone interview, which is Pat. He was doing the interview. But so, of course, at the end of the interview, he just looks at me and he goes, oh, Chrissy boy, how much did we learn on that one, huh? I mean, and he had all these historical authors on this show. So it was always a lesson in history more often than not, which was interesting. But he'd always like ask me about what we learned and stuff. And I didn't have headphones in, but he couldn't, like he was old. He didn't know technology, you know, like, so he couldn't comprehend that aspect that I couldn't hear. Which was just funny because it just happens with old people, you know, and you expect that with old people. But then, of course, the next words out of his mouth were, and by the way, how's Maggie doing? Are you still with her? You said she was an English teacher, right, in high school? And it was just like one of those just surreal moments where you just realize how much he cares about the people in his lives and that he interacts with and talks to. That it was something I had mentioned casually once, just off the cuff, and you know, a year and a half later, he remembers her name, remembers her job, remembers the like that's the high school and the English. Like it was just the guy was just he was an incredible person who I don't think there ever has been or ever will be another person like Pat Williams. You know, I think 19 kids, 15 adopted. He's just a light of just hope and happiness. I got to talk to him briefly about a month or so ago before he passed. It was actually when Jerry West passed. I gave him a call to talk to him about it, just to kind of hear what he thought, which was like another crazy thing to say out loud, that I just had somebody at my disposal that I could call and just kind of ask about the old heads of basketball, and he would gladly tell me these stories about him and stuff. But it was so funny because it was classic Pat as well. He was getting on a plane to go speak at West Point after having broken his leg 4 months before, walking out of Dubstred after lunch one day, which is where we would go after we record his pod at his show at home and everything. But the fact that at that age broke his leg and 4 months later was hopping on a plane to go up and give a speech at West Point. I mean, it's exactly who he was too. He was the hardest working man I think I've ever met, yet a man who took all the time in the world to care about you and whatever was going on in your life. I will truly, truly miss everything about that man.
Yeah. And really, I mean, up here in Philly, and that was wonderful, Cece. Thank you. Because obviously, like you said, you spent way, way more time with him than Sam and I did. I mean, realistically, up in Philly too, he probably should get more love than he does up here. And I think people know, but people should really know. I mean, he was the GM of the team for 12 years. Like, he built the team in 82 and 83. Like, I haven't seen a Sixers championship. No one in the city's seen a title since then. Like, he was really integral for that franchise early on with the Dr. J's, with the Andrew Tonys. Like, all those guys are Pat Williams guys.
And he had no interest in basketball. He always wanted to be in baseball. He went to Wake Forest and was a catcher. He tried out for the Pittsburgh Pirates like farm team and trying to play catcher. And, you know, he was just, because he was Pat Williams and his charisma was incredible. One of the executives kind of took him by the side and was like, "Have you ever thought about working in the front office?" And he was like, "I don't know anything about the front office." And they were like, "Well, you don't know anything about catching either. So why don't you give the front office a try?" And so he did. He went to the baseball front office, and then a job opened up with the Phillies, and he went out and gave it a try, or with the Sixers rather. And it was, I mean, from there it was history.
Yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes it's all about just being in the right place at the right time, putting people in the right position. You know, shout out to them putting Pat in the right position. Obviously, a life very well lived, 84 years old. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. Appreciate you guys, as always. Shout out to Sam and CC for holding it down for Justin this week. Love running the three-man weave, as always. Make sure you check out the Orange Observer for Sam. Read his articles there. Follow him on Twitter at Sam B. Albuquerque. For CC, every time you're in Atlanta, I mean, or you can stream it on the website as well. Check out News Talk, WSB, one of the biggest in the country. Shout out to Chris.
The biggest, most news talk station.
Listen, over 100 years old, like WSB is a staple of that community in the biggest sense of staple that it can be. You got to put the Funko up one more time. That is super adorable, though.
Before we do that, the Orange Observer is the most read hyper-local paper in West Orange County.
I love it. Listen, please, talk your smack. That's what we're here for. Get all your plugs.
We're the only hyper-local paper in West Orange County.
Sam, they don't know that.
They don't know that. I was going to say, let the podcasters be great. Embrace it. Justin will be back next week. We'll see you guys soon.